They call it one of TV's smartest deaths. But what if Gus Fring's final moment is actually a joke on the audience? There are few moments in television history as grotesquely elegant as the one where Gustavo Fring, the calmest man ever to command a meth empire, steps out of a nursing home room with half his face missing. It's the crescendo of Breaking Bad's operatic obsession with control. The man who built an empire from order, undone by a man who thrives in chaos. Yet, in the grand tradition of modern pop culture analysis, this moment of narrative perfection has been reduced to a single syllable: ha. Yes, years after the explosion's dust has settled, audiences continue to debate what exactly Gus Fring's final vocalization was. Was it hawk, ha, haul, how, or something in Spanish? Perhaps a panicked haul-ass, truncated by an inconvenient detonation? Or, if one believes the more creative theories, a meta nod to Vince Gilligan himself. A final ha. Bravo Vince, uttered before spontaneous combustion. This is what television analysis has become, the desperate dissection of a man's dying grunt. The irony, of course, is sublime. Breaking Bad was once hailed for inspiring a generation of armchair philosophers, elevating the art of television criticism into the mainstream. But as time stretches and the show remains off-air for over a decade, its fandom has begun to resemble the bomb itself. Volatile, looping endlessly in its own fumes until all that's left is noise. We have, somehow, reached the point where a guttural exhale has been granted the same interpretive depth as Shakespearean soliloquy. To give credit where it's due, the conversation began earnestly enough. Some questioned whether the sound Gus makes might be a Spanish word, perhaps ha, meaning has, the start of a sentence cut tragically short, a linguistic curiosity. Maybe. Others posited he was screaming haul, a desperate attempt to warn his doomed bodyguard Tyrus to flee the hallway before both became pollos al carbone. Then came the linguistic anthropologists of chaos, insisting that ha was in fact an untranslatable Chilean death cry, a cultural relic buried beneath the ruins of Gus's mysterious past. And from there, the discussion disintegrated with dazzling efficiency into self-parody. Suddenly, Gus's final breath became Hawk Tua, a meme of our times, spat and reshared across every corner of digital discourse. A debate that began with curiosity about one of television's finest characters, morphed into a performative carnival of absurdity. It's the perfect case study in what happens when pop culture fandom runs out of oxygen. When every layer of a work of art has already been peeled, analyzed, and podcasted into oblivion, the audience begins chewing the rind. The result? Endless threads on the acoustics of a scream. One can almost hear Vince Gilligan sighing across the ether. This was not the point, but perhaps it's unfair to mock. After all, this obsessive dissection of the unintelligible is not just a symptom of boredom. It's the byproduct of a cultural ecosystem addicted to engagement. A meaningless question, what did Gus mean when he said ha? Performs exceptionally well in the algorithmic circus. It invites outrage, correction, humor, and pseudo-intellectual commentary. It creates the illusion of conversation long after the conversation has died. So instead of grappling with the thematic brilliance of Gus's death, his downfall born of arrogance, his need to gloat, literally detonating his own undoing, people now compete to outwit one another with increasingly surreal interpretations. Some suggest he was calling Hector Salamanca a whore. Others claim he was reciting the Spanish national anthem. A few believe he was mid-sentence in a Lovecraftian monologue about Poseidon and the sea. In this digital madhouse, even absurdity becomes canon, as long as it garners enough upvotes. The tragedy here isn't just the flattening of discourse, but the utter erasure of what the scene actually communicates. Gus's last words are not linguistic, they're existential. His final moment is one of shock, not eloquence. The point isn't what he says. It's that for the first time, he has nothing meaningful left to say. His control, his defining trait, dissolves into raw animal panic. The sound he makes is the sound of a man realizing that mastery and intellect cannot outthink fate. It's Achilles realizing too late that dragging Hector's corpse was never triumph, only vanity. It's the moment when a god recognizes his mortality and screams. And yet, the modern viewer, unsatisfied with silence, insists on translating it. He says ha, they cry. He says haul. He says hawk tua. Anything to avoid admitting that the scene's brilliance lies in the absence of meaning, the pure, unfiltered terror of a man unmade. From there, the conversation inevitably drifts into its second act, the casting discourse. Suddenly, the fandom is less concerned with the content of the scream than with the accent that delivered it. Giancarlo Esposito, they declare, is a god-awful Spanish speaker, his Chilean accent so unconvincing that native speakers would rather swallow glass. Others leap to his defense, arguing that perhaps the accent's awkwardness was intentional, a deliberate tool to preserve Gus's mysterious origins. And then comes the historical revisionism. Gus, after all, is rumored to have been connected to Pinochet's regime. Surely a man of that stature would not sound like a second-year Spanish student from Albuquerque. The logic is fascinating. An American actor portraying a fictional Chilean drug lord must, apparently, conform to the imagined linguistic exactitude of a dictatorship's general staff. If not, the performance is invalid. It's a peculiar fixation, one that reveals how modern audiences conflate accuracy with authenticity. In truth, Gus's accent serves the story perfectly. His Spanish is polished yet distant, much like the man himself. He is fluent in control, not warmth. His speech patterns mirror his persona, precise, deliberate, devoid of intimacy. Whether or not Esposito's Chilean vowels pass a phonetic purity test is beside the point. The performance's emotional architecture remains flawless, but the fandom refuses to let go. Soon, the debate over Gus's dying grunt and imperfect Spanish evolves into a doctoral thesis on the politics of Don Eladio's homophobia. Did Eladio execute Max because of his and Gus's romantic relationship? Or simply because they dared to conduct business on his territory? Theories clash like rival cartels. Some insist the act was pure machismo, a reflection of the cartel's toxic masculinity and contempt for effeminacy. Others argue it was strategic. Gus and Max were outsiders, interlopers who violated the unspoken laws of dominance. The execution was a message, not a moral judgment. The tragedy of Max's death, however, is not found in sexual politics or business protocol. It lies in Gus's miscalculation, a rare lapse in judgment from a man who otherwise thrives on precision. He believed intellect and presentation could transcend the barbarism of cartel power structures. He mistook the boardroom for the battlefield. His downfall in that flashback is the same as in the nursing home, an overestimation of rationality in a world ruled by ego and fear. And that's where the parallels between his two great humiliations converge. In both cases, Gus Fring enters the room believing himself untouchable. In both, he underestimates the petty brutality of the men across from him. And in both, his downfall is accompanied by that same fatal flaw, his inability to imagine losing. The ha is the echo of that disbelief, the audible collapse of a lifetime's worth of composure. It's almost poetic then, that fans have transformed that sound into nonsense. In their quest to make meaning where there is none, they mirror the very blindness that destroyed Gus himself. They cannot bear silence, ambiguity, or imperfection. Everything must be decoded, named, explained. The inability to accept an incoherent scream as final truth reflects a broader cultural disease, the compulsive need to annotate art until all mystery is bled dry. In the end, perhaps Gus's "ha" is the most fitting legacy imaginable for modern television fandom. A man renowned for his restraint dies screaming, and a culture obsessed with interpretation spends a decade trying to turn that scream into a sentence. The internet, ever unable to leave a corpse unprodded, keeps resurrecting the scene like a digital necromancer, poking at the remains of a masterpiece to see if it will make another noise. The sad truth is that the scream meant nothing and everything. It was not hawk, not hall, not ha. It was the sound of a man losing the illusion of order, a final exhalation of vanity, echoing into eternity. The fact that it has since been transformed into a meme about spitting is, in its own way, poetic justice. Because if Breaking Bad was a study in hubris, the post-Breaking Bad internet is the sequel no one asked for. A community so desperate to prove its cleverness that it becomes Hector Salamanca, ringing its bell endlessly at the ruins of the past. Ha, indeed. Control is an illusion. Engagement isn't. Click subscribe.